Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Moto Talk with Steve and Kim. I'm Steve. That's Kim. That's Killer. And that's Lisa over there. Lisa, good to have you with us. Hey, little shout out today. I don't have any announcements or any. I forget when the Goshen thing is, but that was that this weekend?
Last weekend.
That was last weekend. Okay. Well,
so was the meet at Hendricks County.
Oh, yeah. The Hendricks County one already happened. And Kim bought a Japanese tool at a Harley swap meet. So that was that was kind of interesting. Anyway, hey, we've shout out to Performance Power Sports here locally in Brownsburg. Shout out to BMF Twins, Bear over there, what used to be called Dells. And looks like we've got some people popping on. If you can hear us, let us know. Hi, John. Hey, Gregory. Bill Yarian's on. Hey, we've got a guest with us this evening. Lisa Gilbreath is here, and Kim and I are going to kind of do an interview with her and learn about her story with motorcycle riding and all the adventures that she takes and all the different bikes. She's had probably more bikes than a lot of us all put together. Welcome, Lisa. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And I'm going to give the mic over to Kim, and I'm just going to kind of operate this stuff. Get it over there.
There we go. So yeah, not only are we blessed to have Lisa here, she has so much riding experience, and she's done it her way, which is really terrific as well. So many people are motivated for different reasons to be in the motorcycling sport, and a lot of it has to do with what it gives back to you. But if you go all in with it, you go through many various experiences, and some of us have been doing it for a long time, but most of us that have been doing it for a long time don't do it as much as a guest like Lisa. She's kind of been there and done that on motorcycles for quite some time now. And I had an opportunity to talk to her a little bit about what made her start doing it, which is a great story all by itself. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But if you have any questions for someone who's had a unique relationship with the sport, put them in there and we'll talk about it along the way. But again, thanks, Lisa. This is a medical professional. John Hill will be glad to hear that, who has been working so often that she had to pick a specific time to be on the show because she was working all the time. So we thank her for that, and also thank her for joining us for this show. So hopefully, if you guys have some questions, we'll go.
We do need a third mic, Ron.
Yes, we do need a third mic.
Maybe we'll start a GoFundMe account.
Or two heads, whatever. So again, Lisa, thanks for joining us. I know we talked a little bit about it, but I'd like for you to give us another run through of what got you involved in the sport. What made you interested in it?
I was telling Kim earlier that one of my earliest memories is my father racing motocross, and I was a little kid, and I of course I didn't know who he was when he came around because there's mud flying, and there's your dad, and there's your dad, and that's one of the first things I remember. And I loved motorcycles since then. And they divorced when I was about 5. Mom hated motorcycles after that, and so I didn't get one. I didn't really have a relationship with him after that, and so I was not the best teenager. And she asked me not to get a motorcycle, and to make up for that, I didn't. And one day she called me up, and she was dating a guy that rode a Harley, and she's like, "Look, if you want to ride a motorcycle, if you take that abate safety class, I'll be okay with it." And so I bought a brand new bike within 2 weeks. Someone else had to drive it home. I couldn't even ride it home, and took the class, and I've had one ever since.
So because I had a chance to talk to her about this, I learned something about that, purchasing the brand new bike. So I want to come back to that for a second, because she's going to say something about that that's going to sound familiar to everybody on this program. So why did you buy a brand new bike?
Because I was afraid if I bought a used bike or a beater bike, I might hurt myself. I might be more dangerous than I more normally would. I knew I would take care of a new bike.
Yeah. So, everybody who's been out there doing it, most of us started out on beaters. That's just kind of how it worked. Exactly. So here's somebody who had the presence of mind to know herself well enough to say, if I don't do that and I get a new bike, I'll protect myself and it maybe a little more than typical. So what was that first bike?
It was a Suzuki Intruder.
And what made you pick that?
I don't know. I saw somebody on one and I really liked it. And I didn't know anything about, I had nothing about motorcycles in my price range.
On a new bike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's another part. So how long did you have it?
I don't, maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah, it's long. Yeah, it's an 800. I mean, for a first bike, it's not a bad bike.
Did it ever get to the point where it was such a beater that you rode it too hard?
No. No. I was when I first started riding. I was one of them ones, ride down the circle, get the ice cream at the ice cream place, and ride to Brown County. And I wasn't into it like I'm into it now.
So when we talked earlier, you were saying that you didn't have any motorcycle experience when you took the abate course.
I had none, zero, zip.
And I was explaining, my wife and my daughter-in-law took the same. It could have been in the same class for all I know, at the old Southeastern Avenue location of the old Navistar parking lot. What was that like?
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I still remember things they talked about. I mean, I was so into it that I just absorbed everything and I knew nothing. And so, yeah, I just absolutely loved it. I actually ran into my instructor a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "How do you remember me?" I'm like, "I remember everything about the class."
Awesome.
What did you ride in the class?
God, I think it was an old Honda 350.
Really?
Yeah, they had a bunch of old bikes, just random bikes.
That would have been cool.
And it was an old Honda 350. Because I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's the one.
Did you ever want to get another one?
No.
So you've been doing it now for a while.
Yes.
Without talking about how many decades that is, how has it changed from when you began to where you are now?
Oh.
For you or for whatever?
That Intruder just wasn't built to go places. It was too light. It was just too, I had wide handle. I'd put they look cool, so the wide handlebars, no windshield. Yeah. They were just real wide. And I couldn't do any distance at all on it. And I went from that to a Kawasaki Nomad of all things.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And so,
That's
yeah.
another cruiser.
And then I was riding Niagara Falls, and once I had something that was capable of doing some distance, I kind of knew. Then I started really getting into it.
You're behind the windshield then.
Yeah.
Yeah. That does change things a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know you've done a lot of miles
Yes.
over time.
Yes.
When you take those long rides, where do you go?
I've gone as far as Glacier National. I did a big long trip out there where I hit Black Hills, Yellowstone, Glacier National. I was 5 days in Glacier National. We stayed there. And that's as far west as I've gone. I've done several trips in Colorado, several trips, of course, down in the Smoky Mountains. And like today, I just took off and rode 250 miles before I came here.
So a lot of those long trips are planned out, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhat, yes.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
And then you can go off from that.
Right.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, there's a book called The Complete Guide to Motorcycling in Colorado, and somebody suggests that, and it's the best. Everybody that lived in Colorado, all the BMW people's like, that's what you got to get to go. And they have in the back, they have a 2-week plan. And we loosely based it off of that. It's fantastic.
So I know you said you made a trip from here to Texas to do MotoGP. That was 2015. Would have been.
No, I've done that twice.
Okay.
It
That's
was
a hike.
they weren't having it here, so it was after 15. 15 was the last year here, so it might have been 16 or 17.
So how would you describe the difference between the way they do it here when it was MotoGP and the way they did it there as MotoGP at COTA?
The track is gorgeous, but it's hard to watch there. At Indy, the screens are huge. Like you could see it no matter where you were. At least you had the screens. Nice. The screens down there are small. All this, like at Indy, you could have general seating and still sit in a bleacher if you wanted. There, it's only in the grass if you have a general seating. I would much prefer to watch it here. There were a couple places at Indy that if you got there, you could see a lot of it, you know.
Have you been to Barber?
Yeah.
So,
I have not watched any races of Barber. I've not been to Vintage Days, but I've been to the track, to the museum.
so when you're talking about the difference between those two places, I've been to Barber a number of times. And the thing about Barber that's different is the way George Barber built it was intended to make sure people were moving from one place to another without a seat.
Right.
So that they could see what was going on
Yeah.
and get good views of it. And it really does work like
Yes. Yeah, it does.
that. Yeah, it's fabulous for an event. And
Yes.
if Moto America keeps coming back to the Speedway, and I hope they do, at some point Penske agrees to do that,
Yeah.
I'd go back and see that again.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
But
Hey, I'm going to pop up some pictures here, Lisa.
All
You
right.
can kind of tell us the story about the bike and maybe where you were, if you remember.
Oh, that was actually in southern Indiana. That's the BMW K1300S. I traded a Moto Guzzi in for that.
What was the Guzzi?
It was a V7 Racer, 2012.
really cool looking
Oh yeah, it was the best. It was the prettiest bike I ever
It was a
owned.
dog.
It was. Oh yeah, it was a 12, and it wasn't that wasn't that old, but beautiful, just beautiful. But yeah, there were issues.
Here's one I thought was interesting, and I didn't grab the other picture of all the bug guts on the side.
Yeah.
But,
I'd watched it 3 days earlier.
where was this at?
That was in
this...
I believe that was in Colorado.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
that was in Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we know where this is.
Yes.
Inn. That's always a nice trip if you just want to take a short trip down south, just south of Nashville, Indiana.
It is a great trip, and there's a cool little hotel
shot of
not
it.
too far from that Story Inn that's down the road,
Mhm.
and it has a very steep driveway. And my wife and I were going to ride down there together, and she rode her Sportster. And when we talked to the guy about staying there, he said, "Well, you might want to park your motorcycle at the bottom of the hill because it's such a long gravel driveway
Yeah.
that the bikers that come down here and stay in this place don't want to go up the hill. They park at the bottom."
Yeah.
And I asked my wife, "Are you going to be okay with this?" And she said, "I'm going to go up that hill." And I was like, "Okay." So she gritted her teeth, and it was a long gravel driveway
Yeah.
straight up. And there was no landing area at the bottom. So I was very proud of her for doing that.
Yeah.
She
Kind of nice.
She hung in
If I
there.
want to block you out, I
You can
just
put
got to throw a
up
picture
there.
of
Yeah.
Lisa and I can keep going. Here's a good one.
Oh, that was definitely in Colorado. I remember this. The one thing about the BMW, it had a GPS on the front, but I could pull the radar up on it,
Okay.
and there's just. I mean, I could see lightning. I could see it often. So I got the radar, and I'm like, we got to go now. And we just ran in, and it started hailing. Yeah.
All right. So I was curious about this, so I'm just going to throw it up here. So this is talks about 50,000 miles of connection. And is this an article that you wrote?
Yes.
And someone
Is
posted
that
it
the
in.
owner's news?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So that's BMW owner's news.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So tell us a
BMW
little
owner's
about that.
news. I just randomly sent them in an article. I sat down I had just turned the XR to 50,000 miles, and
Oh, nice.
I came home and I just opened up the computer and just started writing, and I sent it in. And my sister actually snapped that picture that day, and that was down in it's a monastery down in southern Indiana.
Oh, yeah. St. Meinrad.
Yeah, St. Meinrad. That was at St. Meinrad.
That's a cool place.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And she had snapped that picture that day, and I sat and wrote this article, and because of really the BMW made me in part of the motorcycle community. I really think that if there's a bike that changed everything, maybe the beginning was the Tiger, but definitely the BMW.
So was it the community of BMW specific riders, or was it just the community of people that rode bikes like that?
It started, I think, with some of the BMW riders, but I got more involved around town. I got more involved with the women. We talked about that earlier. I just got more involved in general. And I was putting a significant.
And that's the bike right there
Yeah.
that you were putting.
Now, little history.
That's
with
at
that
the Smokies
particular
there.
motorcycle. Was that the offending
Yes.
instrument?
Yes.
So again, if you ride your motorcycle far enough or hard enough, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, you can put 70,000 miles on something of this high quality and still have an issue. So what kind of issue did you have with that bike?
That was I had it. It was 4.5 years old. It's nearly 75,000 miles on it, and it broke a valve. It was devastating. It was devastating.
And it changed your relationship with BMWs, period.
Yes.
So how did that change?
I couldn't buy another one. I loved that bike. Still to this day, my favorite bike I've ever owned. And when it went to pull the trigger to get another one, I couldn't do it. And if it had been the only one, but there had been several Facebook posts, several in the BMW community of that specific engine breaking valves. It usually happened earlier, not as old as mine was, and that BMW was replacing those engines for them. But I ride way too much to have
to worry about that again.
Yeah, so that's a good jumping off point for why you went from one complex motorcycle to another, arguably more complex bike. So where did you go after that, and what made you choose that direction?
I have a Ducati Multistrada now. And people, you know how much maintenance is? I said, if you know how much maintenance was on my BMW, it's the same. It ain't no different, and because to get to the valves on that XR was horrific. And they sent me pictures, and just everything's off of it, everything. And
how often was that service with the Beamer?
that was
Like
18,000 for the vial, and it's the same on the Ducati.
Now. Yeah. Early on they were 3,000.
Yeah,
and that's certainly changed. But with a Desmo motor, it really, absolutely, positively has to be done.
Yeah,
and this, if you haven't already gathered, Lisa is an active rider, not a passive rider. And Steve has another picture there. It's a good example of the next one up.
Oh yeah.
So some of us enjoy riding at speed,
track
in
days,
different situations, but you've taken way beyond the abate course.
Yes.
And in what order, and what did you get from the different ones?
My very first one was the original class that I had never ridden a motorcycle. I did after I bought the big bagger, I took the advanced class and I actually bought the Ride Like a Pro. And I set it up in the parking lot with that bagger so I could actually do the little circle and stuff on it. Yeah. And I did that. And then I took Lee Park's class up in Chicago. That's also in a parking lot. I did that mainly because I wanted someone else to do it. And I knew if I went with them, they would go.
Who'd you go with?
A friend of mine that rides, and I really wanted. She won't get out in the track, and so okay, let's go do this. And I think she'll do the track stuff now. I think,
nice.
But I really liked it. I really enjoyed it for a parking lot class. It was really good. And then I've done California Superbike School. I've done 4 levels of that. I've been at Virginia International Raceway at Virginia, and then the Corvette Museum as well. As a matter of fact, I was having lunch with Keith and Dylan Code and was telling them about your little vintage days down south, and he thought that was cool.
So there's very few people on the earth that are more interesting than Keith Code, for a lot of reasons. He's like the original hippie.
Yeah.
And I've taken 3 levels of the California Superbike School. They only had 3 back in the day. So what were the differences between 1 and 4?
I did 1 and 2 on the RR. I regretted it immediately because as soon as I got out there, they did the full thing where you get weekend. The RR, you get weekend, you get smaller classes, you get and that's the reason I did it. But as soon as I got out on the track, I wanted the XR. as soon as I got out there, I want my bike. I wanted the XR.
So it was a comfort level.
It wasn't so much that, it was just I wanted to know how to do those things on my bike.
Your motorcycle. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And the second time I did it on the XR. It was also 2 days. It was down in at the Corvette Museum. It was the first year they had it down there. And and they would show me, they would come out, because I'm not going to be hanging off an XR, and they would come out and they would show me where I should be on my own bike and things like that.
So it did turn out the way you wanted it to eventually.
Yeah.
So
no, I'd enjoyed the RR. Don't get me wrong. I'm on a track on an RR. I mean, I enjoyed it, but yeah, I wanted the XR for sure. I knew I'd do it again with the XR.
But again, I think what makes you different than a lot of riders is that you ride your motorcycle at speed.
Yes.
You weren't just riding something else on a track for a while and then going to something else.
Yes.
And so what, if you had to boil down the training that you've had thus far, what was the biggest learning and what stretched you more than you thought you would?
California Superbike School. The reason I went is when I got that XR, I'd get on a lot of bikes. I had the Tiger and I had some other stuff, and it didn't take me long to reach its limits, and I'd kind of know where I was and I knew that bike.
I couldn't do that. Could you do that? I don't think so.
Well, as comfortable as I was reaching its limits, I knew that BMW was way more capable than I was. I mean, it was way more capable. And so I wanted to learn into that, is why I ended up in Superbike school.
So with Keith Code School, at least in my experience, they're a little different than some of the other schools in that they put everybody out there, or at least they put at least 5 riders out there with a pace rider.
Mm-hmm.
And the pace rider can kind of give you some individual attention. Then you stop for a while and debrief it, and you go out again. Whereas, or at least that's the way they did it when I did it.
And when I did it, what they would do is you would be in a classroom and they would teach you a skill. And then you would go out and you would practice that skill. Oh. And then they come up and their coach, there's one when I did the first one, there was one coach per 2 people. And then when I did the second one, there was 1 per 3. And they'll come and get behind you and they'll watch what you're doing. And you don't know they're behind you, and then they'll follow someone else. And then you come back and you have a little briefing. This is what you were doing wrong here. In this corner, you tend to do this. And like there was a long straight at VIR, and I would just tense up when I'm coming to that first, and then I'd realize it and I'd relax, and you make that first turn. And he's like, you're tensing up, but you're relaxed. It's like, I remember, oh, wait, I got to relax, and so that, I really like that. I mean, I really like that because you don't know when they're behind you. You don't know when they're watching you, and they'll follow through. This is what you're doing here. If you're making a lot of mistakes, then they'll get in front of you and they have hand signals and stuff kind of showing you what you should be doing.
Yeah, I found it humiliating riding at 10/10 and doing the best I could possibly do, dragging a knee, getting down in it and thinking, man, I'm really getting this.
And
then
someone goes,
oh, yeah.
Then the pace rider goes around you and he's looking backwards. And he's going,
yeah, you're doing good.
One-handed, and I'm like, yeah. Okay. But yeah, that's always a fun thing.
My goal was just to be faster than the other women. That's all I cared about.
There we go. So that's what I'd like to transition to. I'm taking the mic over
as long
here.
as I passed one, yes, I was fine.
I'm taking the mic over. I got some questions. So that takes me to another discussion you and I had, and that's just female riders in general.
Yes.
First of all, so how many female riders would be at some of these learning classes?
Maybe 2 or 3.
Okay.
Out of the whole.
Out of the whole
Yeah.
thing. And so, yeah, we were talking earlier today while we were waiting for our time to actually plug into the show here. How, back after around 2010 or 11 or 12, we started seeing, even in the vintage community, some more female riders, more and more female riders out there learning how to ride and really getting into motorcycles. And you were telling me how early on in your riding career, you didn't see many.
Yeah, it was not unusual for me to be out for an entire 300-mile day and not see another woman on a bike.
But you might see lots of bikes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
See them all day long.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of bikes, but not as many female
it'd
riders.
be real rare for me to see another one. Now it's real rare that I don't.
Exactly. Yeah. And fact is, at the shop, we see probably 300 bikes a year. And I mean, I couldn't tell you how many women are bringing bikes to get worked on.
It's a fair number.
It's a fair number. Yeah.
I'd say 20%, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. And then, of course, we have some people in common that we know that are female riders, like Julia Chip, and maybe some of you guys out there know who that is, and Sarah and Shannon and Josie Savada and a bunch of gals out there that get some riding in. Jenna West, and then of course she's been sponsored by Revit, and so the Revit has the female team that goes out, which is great.
Yeah.
So,
and my wife and my sister-in-law,
and I taught my wife how to ride a dirt bike a while back,
cool.
but that was years ago, and she's like, there's too much to keep track of. It's bad enough just driving a car, right?
She's detail oriented. So, when to Steve's point, what's different about being a female rider than being a male rider? If you can just.
In the beginning, it was. I mean, back then you go into a dealership and they don't want to talk to you, and they don't, they don't think you know what you're doing. And, if you brought somebody with you if I brought somebody with me that never rode a motorcycle, if it was a guy, they're still talking to them, and
how did you deal with that?
A lot of times I would, sometimes there's a couple places I'm out of here.
Go somewhere else.
Cycle Outfitters, they had always had a woman back there as a mechanic, and so they were always real good to go into, even early on. Falcone was really good. They always had women working there, and they were always really good. And it's changed a lot. I mean, it's changed a lot. I don't walk into a dealership these days, and one, I know most everybody now, but. I don't get treated, even out of state, people that don't know me, I don't get treated like that, like I used to. Yeah.
But you're also unusual in that you vote with your wallet. I mean,
yeah.
New high end, you're not buying the average used bike.
Yeah.
So you're going to be popular with any dealer.
Yeah. Well,
no matter what. But the fact that you've chosen, like in this case, Ducati.
Yeah.
That's what's been your experience with Ducati?
Well, I had money down on a Multistrada before I bought the BMW, and when it came back to buying one, they knew who I was. I'd been up there, and so.
And you're talking about Bill Carr's place.
Yeah, and there was somebody was asking me about it outside one day, and I said, "Well, Bill and I have been doing this dance a while, because I'd been looking at Ducati. No, I'm not getting one. I'm not getting one," and. He actually, when I wanted to ride one last time before I made up my mind, and they'd sold the demo, and he let me ride his. So that's how much things have changed.
Yeah, cool. Have you been to Ray Hall at all?
Yes.
And
yes.
What did you think?
Keith works there, who used to be up with Bill, and he was there when I came in, and I love the setup. I love the building. I love the setup. The cars next door, and I haven't worked with them at all, but I sat there and talked to them for at least 30-45 minutes, and I'm hopeful.
So you got respect when you
got there. Oh yeah.
All right, Roger Swartout has a question. How do you tell if it's a female rider?
Oh, no.
When meeting on the road going the opposite way? Well, sometimes you don't tell. I mean, it just, sometimes if they're wearing pink, you just assume it might be a gal. But, there's guys that like pink too, like Roger.
Roger's asking for
my ponytail hangs out the back of my hangs out the back of my helmet there.
Sometime I can tell you how you can tell the female on the motorcycle is my wife, and that's an entirely different story.
Oh yeah,
we'll get her on the show to talk about.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, we'll do that. So this is a setup.
Yeah,
but I got it. But I'm going to put it this way: I mentioned that my daughter might be interested in a Ducati Scrambler, and what's the first thing you said?
People love them.
Yeah.
People love them.
And you want to go check one out.
Oh, yeah, because people love them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like that, though. And like somebody starts talking about a motorcycle, I'm like, I got to try that. That's how I got the street triple. I had no interest in a street triple at all. And why don't you try the street triple? And I'm like, why? I was on a K1300, Why do I want to try that? And I loved it. Loved it.
Cool.
That's awesome.
So this isn't a complicated question, but I know that you've had to either get mentally prepared to ride a tall bike or adjust to it. And
Yes.
you've done it without hesitation.
I think you guys both know Todd Hazard. I worked with him, and he's about my height. He's been riding his whole life, and he's like, Lisa, I've been this tall my whole life. I can ride all these bikes. You can ride these bikes, you know. And he convinced me I could ride a tall bike, and I'm forever grateful for that. I love tall bikes. You know, the Tiger, the XR, the Multistrada, and the guys that encourage women. That's why I'm glad you guys have women on here. I'm glad that you're doing this because the guys that have encouraged me throughout, I was convinced I could ride a bagger. I was convinced I could ride a tall bike. I was convinced and it was guys like you guys that are going, yeah, do it. You know, yeah.
Did anybody tell you to be nervous about riding 200 horsepower?
People that didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. There's a bunch of people I wouldn't say should do it at all.
There are some bikes that I've gotten on that when I test ride it after I put tires on it or whatever, that I get back and I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. So, well, hey, we're going to shut her down, guys. And thanks for tuning in. Kim, what are you going to do? Oh, you're going to do a product of the day.
Yes, this is the motorcycle tip of the day. This is about 20% dish soap and water. And I use it for tire mix, but you can use it on anything that you want it to be slippery that moves around. If you're putting a tube in a tire and you want to make sure it goes on easily, this is a good thing to spray because not only will it go on there, but it'll be slippery enough and then it goes away. So it's a good thing. This is my tip.
Thanks, Bill, Roger, all you guys, Dusty Pine, for tuning in. And
Thanks to Lisa.
Thanks a whole lot
Thank
for
you.
Lisa showing up here and getting on the show and talking about her moto experiences. So, hey, if you want to be on the show and you pay me enough money, I'll get you on here. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
Next time you see Lisa, we'll be talking specifically about riding talent.
Actually, maybe we ought to say if you do more than 30,000 miles a year, you can get on the show, right? So we would not have to.
Narrow the audience.
Lisa will have her own show now. Okay. All right. We'll see y'all later. Take care.
Thanks.